If I do not carry more weight in the brotherhood, it's not KW's fault. That meal was amazing. I always know it. I'm a church potluck when there's fried chicken and cornbread. But thank you so much for the invitation to be here, for the opportunity to worship together this morning, for the food and the opportunity this afternoon. I don't know what you normally do this time on Sunday afternoon. Sometimes people around where I live have chairs in their house that are real comfortable, and they kind of kick them back and maybe turn the NFL or something like that on. And all of a sudden, I don't know why, but it seems like that time of the week when your eyelids get the heaviest and just kind of want to meet together. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you, if you fall asleep, I'm assuming the best. I'm assuming you're either praying or meditating. We're not in the third story, so we don't have to worry about Eutychus falling out the window and Chris raising them from the dead. But anyway, this session gets really specific and personal about some things, and I want to keep it rather informal, and I want to tell you 2 or 3 things just kind of up front. One, I'm the servant of the Lord, and because I'm the servant of the Lord, I'm your servant as well. So if I can help you during this presentation, if I can help you after this presentation, at the end of the presentation, I'll give you my contact information. If I can help you next week, next month, next year, whenever, I want to do that. It's a ministry, it's part of my ministry, part of a place that God has put me to where hopefully I can help brothers and sisters in the Lord. Serving as a financial advisor is a really neat thing for me because I get to work with a lot of good people, brothers and sisters in the Lord. And so, whatever way I can help you, there's never a charge for anything. If you got questions or anything like that, I'm just glad to be a part of that. So if you have questions during the presentation, don't hesitate to speak up. Don't hesitate to raise your hand. It will be somewhat informal. And so, I do want to answer your questions. Some things may be of a personal nature where you don't necessarily want to ask that question out loud, but I'm happy to answer that privately as well. So here's where we're going this afternoon. Untapped, underestimated, and sometimes unknown gifting opportunities. By the fact that you're here this afternoon, I'm assuming, and I think correctly so, gifting is important to you. Giving is important to you. Being God's servant is important to you. So you're wanting to know, what is it that I can do? What fits my particular situation? And how can I be the best giver that I can possibly be in order to bring glory to the Lord? So thankful for the opportunity that you guys have in front of you with the Next Tech Academy opportunity. And there'll be some things that you can do now. There'll be some things that you can do later. There'll be a lot of things, but let me say this kind of on the front end. I don't know anything you can do in the gifting arena that's greater than prayer. I just don't know anything. Because I've probably said, and people have with good intentions said in times past about things, well, I'll pray for that, or I'll pray for this, or that's the least that I can do. Not according to James chapter 5, verse 16. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous person has a humongous effect. So not only with the acts, not only with the money or whatever, please don't underestimate the power of prayer and what we're talking about. John 3:16 is probably the passage that more people know than any other passage. For God so loved. Okay, love is the word we throw around a lot in our world today. But for God so loved that he gave. Well, giving, 'tis the season. And I don't even know what today is. Today is the 8th. Okay, somebody do the math for me, especially for the men here. How many shopping days do we have left? So I appreciate all the reminders on those kinds of things. And this is just a sideline. It's technically not part of it. But for those of you that are wives, help us. Give us a list. Give us hints. This doesn't come naturally to most of us. If you're a man, that does come naturally too. I need to talk to you afterward because, we'll take all the help, all the hints, all the whatever that we can get. But God so loved that he gave who? His son, his only son, so that we could have an opportunity to spend eternity with Him. So as we talk about giving, we're talking about loving. We're talking about what matters and what's important to us. All of us have given over time things somewhat in an obligatory manner. Maybe at work they're taking up a collection for something, or maybe somewhere else, or maybe it's a ball game or whatever. This is not obligatory giving. This is hearts filled with love that are trying and that are seeking to help God's work and to help other people. So, as we think about some things that are underestimated, when I talk about gifting and stewardship, sometimes people kind of go, well, I don't have a whole lot of money. How's this going to fit me? Well, there are so many things that can be done that are not monetarily oriented. I want to talk about a couple of those, and then we're going to get to some specific things that do have to do with money or things that are associated with money. But things are underestimated. Time. Who has the most time in this room? Every single one of us, right? We have the same amount of time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Maybe you're retired, maybe your situation is different. You may have control over more or certain sections of your time, but the time that you can give to people that are hurting, the time that you can give to people that are struggling, the time that you can give to people that need to see Jesus in your life, the time that you can give in Bible study with people or with encouragement of people that maybe have just started to walk with Jesus, you can't place a value on it. What would you, if somebody said, I'll buy your time, how much? We somewhat look at it in this way. If we work for somebody, they'll pay us X dollars an hour or things of that nature. But we're thinking about time. We're thinking about ways that we can utilize our time for the Lord. If you were to take away the meeting times last week and you were to sit down and write down the amount of time that you spent in the Lord's work for His cause last week, how much time would that be? Between times of studying, times of prayer, times of giving of your opportunities to help other people, the use of time. Secondly, words. Words are powerful. They're extremely powerful. Jesus said, by your words we're justified, by our words we're condemned. Word fitly spoken is like apples of gold. So many passages that talk about words. Words that can be encouraging. Words that can be helpful. Words about the gospel of Jesus Christ. Words that would lift someone up. If I were to ask you to write down 10 people that you know that are struggling, most of us could fill up 10 really quick and could keep that list going. What words am I going to use? What words are you going to use this week to try to help them? Gifts of words. How many of us have had people have say things just as simple as, good job, or I appreciate your efforts to serve the Lord, or what you're doing is making a difference. Words are tremendous gifts. Cards. How many of you have ever received a card from someone? Okay. Does it make a difference? It absolutely makes a difference. It makes a difference, just some notes. And I know cards are kind of old-fashioned now between text and emails and Instagrams and Facebooks and all that kind of stuff. But I want to encourage you this week, get a card and just write some notes to someone, encouraging them. And there's so many different ways. Telling people you're praying for them. Tell them that they're doing a good job. 1972 in May, it was the 14th, I was baptized into Christ for the remission of my sins. Not far down the road, there was a lady that lived with her husband, 3 small children. And she, a little beknownst then, but very soon she would contract cancer and die fairly shortly. But before that time, after I was baptized that very week, that lady wrote a little card, wrote a little note and said, we are so proud of you that you made this decision to follow Jesus. And we want you to know that we're here for you and how can we help you, and some other short thoughts. How can I not remember what I had for supper last night and still remember something that far ago? Because they make a difference. They really do make a difference. Maybe it's a new Christian here. Maybe it's somebody that's going through a hard time. Maybe it's somebody you're studying with. I don't know what that is, but when we think about gifts, oh yeah, we like to gift $1 million or $1 billion or whatever, but there are things that are priceless that you and I can do. Text. How many of you have cell phones? Duh. Can you live in America without a cell phone? I could probably live better without a cell phone in some ways, but can live, and just things that you can do. Send it to somebody. Send a text to somebody. Works a lot like the time and the words and the cards. One of the things I started doing, I don't know how many months, years ago now, but staying in the Word is really important. So I would try to focus on a Bible verse every day. And I thought, well, if I'm going to focus on a Bible verse every day, why don't I send that to somebody? And that list of people that I send to has grown over the years. And just, how long does it take to go click? And, ways that you can gift in that sense. The gospel, the gift of the gospel. What gift could you get or I get? Every single one of us had somebody that shared the gospel with us. Maybe it was parents, maybe it was a spouse, maybe it was somebody sitting in this building this morning. But the gift of the gospel of Jesus Christ. There is no other way to come to Jesus than through the gospel. That's it. But the good part is, every one of us can do that. Every one of us can share in some way or another. The invitation. What I've found out, maybe you've got something different, it's not about we're asking, excuse me, we're asking people and we're getting a lot of no's to the question, would you like to learn more about Jesus? What's generally speaking the problem? We're not asking. And if you do not ask, the answer is always what? It's always 100%, 1,000% of the time, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. But if you do ask, the answer may be yes. The value of the gift of offering to share the gospel with someone. Let me tell you a true story about a friend of mine. 1974, I think, was the year. His parents had got divorced. He was living with his mom and his stepdad, I want to say in Baldwin, Mississippi, in a trailer park in a trailer. And a lady came and knocked on their door one Saturday. And this lady asked this gentleman's mother, when she found out there was a boy and a girl, can they ride our joy bus? Can they ride our church bus? We'll come on Sunday mornings, Sunday nights, and Wednesday nights and pick them up. Would you allow them to ride our church bus? They said yes. And so the next morning, that boy, about 12 years old, got on that bus, and that girl got on that bus and began to ride that bus. A couple years later, that boy was baptized into Jesus Christ. He continued to ride the bus until he was 16 years old and was able to drive, and then he drove himself. He found a girl that he really liked and he wanted to marry, and she was a part of the church, and her dad was a preacher, and he married her. And then, not long after that, through the encouragement of his dad, he became a gospel preacher. And he's been preaching for a church just outside of Booneville, Mississippi for over 35 years now. He's one of the elders there. His name's Tony Brown. Got a printing company. I talked to him yesterday. I heard that through the Jenkins Institute, and Tony and I have been friends for a long time, but I never knew that story. And I talked to him yesterday, and I said, Tony, where do you think you'd be now if that woman hadn't knocked on your mom's trailer door in 74? He said, oh, probably in jail or dead. But one invitation. Would you let your children ride our church bus? You never know. The power of one invitation. I was fortunate enough when I was growing up, we had a bus ministry and got to be a part of that. And the lives that can be changed, but it didn't have to be about bus ministry. It's about connecting people to Jesus Christ. What gifts and opportunities do you have? There are certain things we could talk about today, and we could all, or most of us truthfully say, well, I can't do this, and I can't do that, and I can't do the other. What can I do, and how can I do to share the gospel of Jesus? All right, so let's talk about charitable gifting a little bit from a monetary standpoint. Here's where we're going to talk about some specific things. We referenced Acts chapter 4, 34 through 36. this morning in our lesson, and how the people sold what they had and brought the money, gave it, laid it at the apostles' feet, said, hey, take care of the people that had needs. And so here's some opportunities. This is going to fall in the untapped and sometimes unknown situation. It's the end of the year. Sometimes people this time of year go, wow, I've had a really, really good year. How can I best give to glorify God and do it in the most effective way? So we're going to be talking about that this afternoon. So it starts out by the timing of what we're doing. Am I going to give during my lifetime? Am I going to give at my death? Or am I going to give after my death? And you can do one or all three of these or some of them. But it's an intentional mindset of how can I most effectively give to God. And oh, by the way, I still remember what Jesus said from Luke 6:38 this morning. When we give, God's ultimately going to bless us. Wills. That's one of the ways that you can ultimately bless. And we've been talking today about Next Tech Academy, either that, the church, some other good 501c3 organization. What do you think the likelihood of us dying is? 100%. I'm on that one. I think I read that in a book one time. Hebrews chapter 9, about verse 27. It's pointing a man once to die, and after this judgment, lest you and I are here when the Lord comes again, we're going to die. And so whatever we have is then going to somebody else. And there's a couple different ways of dealing with that. Number one, you can determine that by an instrument called a will. Number two, if you don't have one, the state of Mississippi has probably got one for you. And it may not be the same one that you would have. But a lot of people use wills in a very effective way. You may have either monetary things, property, lands, houses, other things that you want to will to Next Tech or to the church or some other good thing. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands because it's always, unfortunately, relatively low when I ask how many people have a current will in place, because it generally falls in this category. Oh yeah, I need one of those and one of these days. How much is on your one of these days list? One of these days I'm going to. So I strongly encourage you to get a will, get advanced medical directive, and get a power of attorney. All three of those things can be useful and helpful for you if you're the age of adulthood. So the second thing is life insurance. A lot of times when people at different points in times recognize, okay, I may die, and if I die, my family's going to need some things, and they go out and they buy life insurance, either whole life or term life insurance. But sometimes later on in life, it gets to the point where it's like, I don't really need this life insurance anymore. The reasons I bought this for, maybe it was to make sure kids got through college or a house got paid off or other things. Things have transpired and happened. And so one of the things that you can do is you can make the church, Next Tech, other good facilities an opportunity to be able to give some money through that direction. Let's say you got a $100,000 life insurance policy and the heirs are probably not going to need it. You can designate all of that, some of that, part of that, and a lot of good things have been funded, have been helped through life insurance. Life insurance beneficiaries are revocable, which means, if you set something as a beneficiary now, you can change it later if you need to, if you want to, if there's a reason for that. But that's a really good way to be able to, at death, be able to advance good causes. Property. Chris and I were talking about this last night, and sometimes people have property, and it's like, okay, I really don't need this property. I've got what I need. I don't need this property, but maybe it's property I've had for a long time, and I don't have a lot of money in it, but property's gone up in value because last time I checked, they're not making any more land, are they? Are they doing that in Mississippi? We're not doing that in Alabama, so there's not any more, and they're messing up some that we got now. But property. So let's just say, for instance, you've got some acreage or land that's worth $100,000. Let's say you've only got $20,000 in it. You only paid that amount of money. Well, if you just said, wow, Next Tech could really, really, really benefit from the money from that property. So I think I'll sell that and I'll give that money for that purpose. Well, if you sell it for $100,000 and you've got $20,000 in it, does anybody know a problem that would potentially create? $80,000 in capital gains. Yuck. Let me see the people in here that just get really excited about paying taxes. No hands. Okay, all right. Well, what about if Next Tech could get the $100,000, but you paid zero taxes, and you did that legally? That sounds a whole lot different, doesn't it? So, and here's where it becomes the importance of some things, of the way you do some things. So, in that particular case, do not sell the property. Gift the property directly to the church or to Next Tech. You still get the full $100,000 tax deduction for that. But because you gifted it, there is zero capital gains tax on that because you didn't sell it. So that's a really good thing. But again, there's an importance between gifting it and then selling it and giving the money. You say, what's the difference? Next Tech or KW gets the money either way. That's true. But for you, there's a difference in paying capital gains on $80,000. So that's really important. If you got questions on this stuff, again, I'm going to be here a little while afterwards, or ask the elders, or ask Chris or Jay or someone, and we'll be glad to help get you an answer as far as that goes. Yes, sir.
If it's inherited, then you don't pay taxes on it either, do you?
Okay, that's a great question. So here's what happens with cost basis. So, and I'm going to go a little further even than the question you asked, because I had somebody in my office this week asking me a question kind of associated with it. Let's say that you die with that property. You still got the property and you die and it's in your name. You get what's called stepped up in basis, which goes to your point. So all of a sudden, the basis now to the heirs is whatever that value is at the time of death. And so, but if you want to gift it during your lifetime, you've got the old basis. And so if you want to gift it during the lifetime, you want to gift it directly to the nonprofit and not sell it first. But there's something called stepped up in basis. And a lot of times, and I'll dive more into this if you prefer that I do, but sometimes people ask, okay, should I go ahead and gift my house and my property to my kids while I'm alive so that the nursing home or the state of Mississippi or somebody doesn't get it? Every case has its own merits. I don't normally recommend that, because what happens is then you have given your kids or whoever a lower basis in it, whereas at the time of death, they would get a step up in basis and not have the lower basis in it. So basis, every situation has its own merits, but if you're going to gift it during your lifetime to a nonprofit, do it directly. Don't sell it first. And if you're going to gift it to your kids or somebody else, make sure that you get good counsel on that, because that's not all, and if something happens within 5 years of the time you gift it, they may still be able to go back on part of that things too. So when you gift it, step up in basis, those are all important things. Other questions on that part?
Is there an age, as far as like 65, if you're over a certain age, that you don't have to pay tax on either something that you inherit or something that you sell?
Okay, great question. So when you inherit something, you don't have to pay tax. There's no age limit, whatever. Inheritance is not taxed, so that's not a problem. But as far as capital gains and things like that go, there's really no age there either. If you have capital gains and you're 35, or if you have capital gains and you're 95, you're still subject to taxation on that. So inheritance, the person inheriting does not pay tax, but if you're looking at selling and getting capital gains, it doesn't make any difference as far as that goes, what particular age that you are. Other questions? All right, another really great opportunity as you think about, hey, how can I bless Next Tech, KW, some other good work of the Lord? Appreciated stock. 2022 was not a good year for stocks. 2023 and 2024 have been really good years for stocks. And so it may be that you've got stock accounts or stock positions that have grown substantially, and you're thinking, okay, God's been really good to me. How can I just gift that growth or some of that growth to KW or Next Tech? what you can do is, again, and what I'm about to say is really important, you need to gift that particular stock or fund directly to KW or Nextech. KW has an account set up that you can do that. Do not sell the stock first and then gift it, because if you do, then you're going to pay capital gains. And I'll go back kind of like we did with the land. So you got stock that's worth $20,000 and you only paid $5,000 for it, and it's just done really, really well. And you say, hey, there's some great blessings to go to the church or Nextech with that $20,000. You would want to gift it directly, because if you got 5 in it and you gift it for 20, you still have zero capital gains tax, versus if you sell it and then give the money, you're going to pay capital gains tax on $15,000. And you get the full amount of the value when you gift it as a tax deduction. So you get the full $20,000 without having to pay any capital gains tax. And so that's whether you have an advisor, whether you're doing it on your own or whatever, you want to be careful to pick which funds or which stocks you do that on, because you may have some that have losses. That's not a real tax advantage way to be able to do that. You can still gift those, but what you want to gift is the ones that have appreciated the most, because that's where your bigger gap is between your basis and between your value at the time you gift it. Questions on appreciated stock? All right, trust. Trusts don't get used a lot. They get used some. There's at least a couple different kind of trusts. Let's say you've got a significant amount of money and you say, okay, I want to take an income stream off that trust as long as I'm living, and then once I die, whatever's left, I want to gift to the church or gift to Nextech or gift to wherever. You can do that. Some people go the other route and say, okay, I've got a significant sum of money and I want to let the church take an income stream as long as I'm living, and then I want to take whatever's left and leave that to my heirs and things like that. So they're not that difficult to set up. You would probably need some help in doing that, but trust can serve as a way too to bless the church, to bless wherever, either during your lifetime or at your death, as far as that part goes. Beneficiary designations. So if you have an IRA, if you have an investment account, a lot of them require or at least allow you to put a beneficiary designation on. So let's just say that you've got an IRA account and that IRA account's got $100,000 in it. You could set the church, you could set whatever as a beneficiary, which means that money's going directly wherever you set it at death. And you can do that for some of it or all of it. You might say, well, okay, I want Nextech to have $20,000 of that or $50,000 of that or whatever. Beneficiary designations are revocable as well, and so you can change them as time goes by, as situations go by. I had a client last week that his wife passed away, and so on virtually all of his stuff, his wife was his primary beneficiary. Well, now his wife's not here, so one of the things that we'll need to do is we need to go in and set up his accounts differently to say, okay, who do you want to be the beneficiary designation now? So you can use beneficiary designations on bank accounts, on investment accounts, on life insurance, on IRAs, on 401ks, pretty much anything that they'll allow you to do a beneficiary designation on, you can set the church or something else up as a beneficiary, either partially or fully, as far as that part goes. Yes, sir.
So that, does the government, if you were to do something like that with tax-deferred type savings, the government should say that?
Yeah, they don't care.
Something like a 401k type scenario?
So, to kind of go back to Tom's question for a second. So, if I die and my wife is the beneficiary of my IRA, what's probably going to happen is it's just going to get rolled over and transferred into hers. But if she took that money out, she'd have to pay tax on it. But if I die and KW is the beneficiary of my IRA, the money goes to KW and there's no taxes because, nonprofits don't pay taxes. So, Other questions on beneficiary designation? Yes.
Like an inherited IRA, something like that, you got 10 years to pull it out, your taxes, your marginal tax rate. Can you give that to the church or a non-taxable entity and it not be taxed?
All right, I'll talk about that. Well, I'll talk about that when we talk about RMDs. And so I'll go ahead and discuss that. So with inherited IRAs, can I go ahead, or with an IRA, can I go ahead, excuse me, and donate that to the church or nonprofit? Does anybody know what RMDs stand for? Yes. Required minimum distribution. There's a lot of head scratchers with the government, and this is kind of one of them to me. So you can put money back and have it tax deferred, but then they're going to say at a certain point, you got to start taking an amount. Now, that's not my favorite idea, but, they've not made the first phone call to me to ask me what I thought about that. But, so it used to be 70.5. Now, depending on your age, it can be 72, it can be 73, it can be 75. But RMDs mean you're required to take that out. Well, when you take that money out, if it's in an IRA, a 401k, tax qualified plan, you have to pay tax on it. Well, for a lot of people, I say a lot, for a significant number of people, they don't really need that money. They don't really want to take that money out, but they got to take it out. So what you can do with an RMD, and you can do this on an inherited IRA too, is you can do something called a QCD, which is a qualified charitable distribution. And with the QCD, let's just say that Tom's got an IRA and he has to take out $5,000 for 2024. And he says, I don't need that money and I want that money. Nextech or KW or somewhere can have that money. What you have to do is you have to get it sent directly from the fund to the church or to the nonprofit. Again, don't take the money out and then give the money to the charity. Have them send that directly. Usually there's one page of paperwork or whatever. You can do all of it, some of it, or none of it. You can do, if his RMD was $5,000, he could send all $5,000 Nextech, or he could send $3,000 Nextech, or he could send $0 to Nextech. So you can send it directly, and you do not pay any taxes on the money that you're sending over. Now, that works really well for a lot of people because you're not going to get a charitable deduction for it because you're not being taxed for it. But a lot of people, since they've raised the standard deduction, don't itemize anyway. So it works out really good there. You can do it beyond that. You can do beyond your required minimum distribution. Let's just say the required minimum distribution is $5,000, but you got $250,000 in that account. You say, hey, Nextech could use a lot more than $5,000. So you can do for 2024 up to $105,000, even if your RMD is a lot less. So you've got up to $105,000 you can do and basically do that without paying any taxes. Question?
But you don't get a charitable contribution for that?
Exactly. Yeah. So, you'd want.
What do you get in lieu of it then?
Huh?
What do you get in lieu of it?
Not paying taxes on it.
Okay.
So if you took the $105,000 out, you would pay a tax on $105,000. What you get in lieu of that is you don't have to pay the tax on the $105,000. So, which is.
Yes, the benefit is you want to give a sum of money. Mm-hmm. This is a small way to give it without having to give Uncle Sam.
Exactly. Because Uncle Sam was going to get money out of that if it came out. But even if it came out and then you turned around and wrote a check, then you still got to go through the itemized process, and you may or may not have enough to itemize your deductions. So yeah, it's a good way to get it to the church and not have to give your.
And realistically, it's more financially beneficial to do it that way because.
Oh, absolutely.
The little pittance that the government gives you back for whatever you give, whatever little break they give you on it's far greater than the tax implications that they're going to do, because they're going to make sure they're taking a lot more than they're giving back.
You're not going to beat the government. You're right.
This money and I'm getting a reduction in my taxes while I'm giving you this money, you're getting all of it versus.
Exactly. So yeah, and a lot of this stuff we're talking about is not just good gifting, but it is smart tax stuff too. So you're not only doing a really good thing. Yes, sir.
Are you going to get into, I don't know if you said, I don't know if this is maybe the said about standard deduction. I'm married, I've got 3 kids. I'd have to give a fortune to meet that, and I'd have to be itemized and all that. And by the time it's all said and done, I'm probably paying myself $3 an hour to do all that. It's too much of a hassle.
Right.
So what if I also have a business, an LLC? Can you give from an LLC out of your profit? Let's say I was going to write a check for $1,000 out of this LLC's profit. Will that be a charitable distribution? And does that go against the
Yeah, that's going against your, that's going against your LLC, but it does, if I understand your question right, that does the exact same thing of, okay, that amount's not taxable. So I made $10,000, but I gave $3,000 out of my LLC, so my net profit that I'm paying tax on is $7,000. So it's reducing your gain on your LLC, which is, the best thing you can ultimately do.
How does the government look at that? Is that just a one-time gift or something like that?
It's, for lack of better terminology, it's basically considered an expense. So on your LLC. So, and I mean, if you did it the next year or whatever, you definitely do that. The last one I want to mention is called a donor advised fund. It's a little unique, but I know situations that it fits. Let's say somebody sold their business and they made a bunch of money on their business in 2024, and they go, wow, I'm going to have to pay a whole bunch of taxes. But I want to give, and I want to give a significant amount, but I don't really know who and where and when and all that right now. So let's just say somebody sold a business and they made $2 million off that business. And they're like, I don't pay tax on $2 million. So they set up a donor advised fund. Let's just say they set up a $250,000 donor advised fund. They take that money, they put it in a specific fund, and they get a tax credit for the $250,000 in 2024. They don't gift all of it in 2024, but over the next X number of years or whatever, they decide who, what, where gets that money. So they're eventually going to gift that $250,000. They just don't gift it yet. You say, well, why even do it like that right then? Well, because that was the year they earned the money. That's the year they need the tax deduction. And so they do the donor advised fund to get the tax deduction in that year. And then they'll eventually, over time, gift out of that fund. Now, they don't get another deduction when they gift out of the fund because they already got it in the year that they sold the business. But that's a unique gifting tool that sometimes people use. Questions on that or other things that we have covered?
Back to your thing, like appreciated stocks, most of us are going to hold so many varied things. That's really going to be a conversation with our financial advisor or looking into our own portfolio intricately to figure out which one of these are ultimately the best pathway to choose as far as, it'll tell me I got $1,500 that I bought this stock for, and it's realized capital gains or $900 on it. I got one that I paid for $1,500. It's got $400 in capital gains. I need to do but that's just a detailed conversation.
Sure. So a client calls me up and says, hey, I want to donate or contribute $15,000 out of my joint account. Tell me which funds I need to liquidate to do that. And so I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at them fund by fund to see which one has the most capital gains, which ones has the least capital gains. And like Chris said, we're going to pick the ones that has the most capital gains because that saves us the most tax dollars.
And so, Jay and I had this conversation the other day that got my wheels spinning about it, and I talked to you last night about it. So then from the end of the year standpoint, when we make we're going to do the stock thing, right? So does my financial advisor generate whatever the little paper is, the one you get every year from them, like the 1099 something other, whatever it is? Do they generate that paperwork, or how does that work?
Okay, so...
Or is it like Colby Kelly's responsibility?
Yeah. So basically, here's what happens. Somebody calls me and says, hey, I want to donate $10,000 worth of stock to, KW or Next Tech or whatever. There's a fund that's set up that can handle that already. And so what I would do is I would give, let's just say it's being held at, Fidelity or wherever. What we'd do is we'd just give them that ID number, and then they would transfer that money directly over to the KW account that's set up for that. KW doesn't have to keep it in that stock. KW can turn around and sell it then and put it in something that may be more conservative, or they might keep it in that stock or whatever. Jay and I figure that out. But, there's a process of doing that, and you just need to have the right number. It's not exactly a wire, but it is a transfer, and so you just need some.
Validity, who's the one that provides the validity? Is that Colby and Kelly that's job is to rectify that, or is it my financial advisor? Jones is who holds.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Jones would be the one.
You or Jones one would call me and say, hey, where does this money need to go?
And they would generate the paperwork I need for my tax.
Jones would then sell that. Well, they wouldn't even sell the stock. They would just transfer that stock directly into KW's Schwab account. And we would tell them the numbers of where to do that. Other questions? And again, there's my contact number. You may have questions later on down the road or whatever that you want to ask. That's my cell number. Feel free to call that. I'll be glad to get back to you as far as that part goes. Again, I'm you guys' servant. The Lord's put me in a spot where, I can help people do what they want to accomplish in gifting and things like that. And I'm extremely thankful to Him that He's put me in that spot where that can be a part of my ministry, is to help you guys to serve Him and to contribute to Him. Tom.
Is the timing of it sits in, there's a lot of things you can do after the year. Once you kind of start seeing your taxes, how they work out, is this one of these things that's got to be done before the end of the year?
Okay, so the timing is not yes and no. Does that sound political enough in an election year? So as far as if you're doing, I'll just say appreciated stock. If you're doing that, it really doesn't matter if you do it before the end of the year or after the end of the year, because you're not going to pay tax on it either way. So, and you're not going to get a tax deduction. So that's not going to matter. RMDs, you've got till the end of the year to do those. So RMDs, you'd want to do those before the end of the year. Beneficiary designations are not going to make that much difference. It's a little bit different, and I don't know if this is where Tom was going or not, but like, for instance, if you're going to make an IRA deduction, you've got until you file your tax return the next year to decide to do that. So, most of these are not that. And so, but, again, if you got specific questions about some and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, and, I had somebody ask me during the break, say, I need to talk to you before the end of the year because I got some things that I need to do that I need to get done before the end of the year. So if you're not sure about that, give me a call. I'll be glad to, share information with you as far as that part goes. Other questions? Thank you guys so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for lunch. Thank you for your attention. And again, if I can be, your servant, I am very, very happy to do that.
I'm going to take a few minutes to give an update.
All right.
I'm going to try to connect to the thing here where I can show you something. Is the thing on this display adapter, Randy? What is it, 33 or the 2A, 6A? Which one is it? The 33, okay. So this is where we're at with just kind of a progress report. So one of the things that we intended to do was, when we talked last time, was to get the 501(c) set up. That's taken care of. Kenley and her firm down here has written all the, we've got all the paperwork, got it all filed, everything's in place on that. Our elders sit on the board of that. Kelly, because we need a treasurer, and Kenley, because we need a secretary. Kenley, she can, there's obvious things that that are owned by KW right now. They'll have to be conveyed over, like a lot of the stuff that's been donated to us and things like that. That'll have to be conveyed over. Well, we need somebody that can articulate that. And Kenley just informed me this morning that you can't use ChatGPT for ethical purposes for writing legal documents. So and maybe she's just keeping her job. I don't know. But anyways, we knew the original intentions were that we were going to, when I was talking to Andy, the attorney there, when I was talking to her about the moving into the new place, she was jumping up and down about, expanding to Next Tech. We knew that eventually we'd have to expand it geographically just because we're landlocked. The place we're in now, I built it. I dug the footers. I poured the concrete. I hung the lights. I paid for the air conditioner in the place, right? But logistically, we can't grow it 4 times, really about 6 times the size of what it is now from just because of where we're at and, the obvious, the economical impact on my family it would be to do that again. And so that's why we knew that we would have to grow in order to be able to, there's just an equitable value. You can't grow unless you sow. There's just no other way that you can say that. And so we knew we'd have to grow. Andy, the attorney, she was like, I can't believe you're doing this at your house. Well, obviously that's another reason why we have to get out, the liability side of it. So we're intending to move somewhere temporarily and then maybe eventually build on the land that's out in Petal. Well, after our powwow that Sunday night, Tyler and Jana called me on the way home and or maybe one other evening, I said, hey, have you thought about the Andy Moore Appliance Building? It's right in Petal, and if you know Petal, as this is where you come across the Leaf River right here. This is the Leaf River coming from Hattiesburg Main Street. You come into Petal. Petal's fed by 2 arteries, one on the left and one on the right, East Central, and then Carterville Road. The Andy Moore Appliance Building is right here in front of, you can see here, that's the old bowling alley in Petal right there. So it's the first light at the, you turn right at the stoplight, and then Mr. Andy's place, which will be ours, is right here. And so we're going to buy this. It's about 20 years old. Those 3 power lines right there means that it's got 3 phase on the pole. 3 phase is an integral part to us. Dixie wanted $168,000 to run 3 phase to the shop we're in now, and I actually had to build my own 3 phase power generation system so that I wouldn't pay $168,000. So I built my own phase generation system to be able to run the equipment that we have now. Well, now we've got it on the pole in the parking lot. Jim Card works for Schneider Electric. He met me over there with the Mississippi Power guys. Mississippi Power is actually going to run the power to the place for free for us. So they're going to run the 3-phase power to it. I approached Mr. Andy and Miss Joanne, and he just stopped doing business. He's just at the point in his age and he's had some health challenges and stuff like that, so he just can't do business anymore. And so Mr. Andy we met with them and talked with them, and they said they'd like to get $300 for it. And I said, well, I'd like to be closer to $200. And they said, well, how close? I said, $225. And they said, it's yours. So we're going to pay $225 for the building itself, proper. We'll have to spend, this whole section back here is unconditioned, right? And so you take the shop, like what the nature of the equipment that we use, hyper precision. You can't let it rust. You can't let it get any humidity on it, anything like that. It will, once it rusts, it's junk. You can throw it away. And so, for example, in South Mississippi, it's a sauna from about now until then, right? It's never humidity conducive for anything like that. So we'll have to condition the space in there. We'll have to, put an air conditioner in. I've already met with some guys that'll put an air conditioner in, just get prices on that. We'll insulate it. What we'll do is we'll be able to use the front part of this place, Mr. Andy's place. You can see in the pictures right here, this is the front part of this is Mr. Andy grinning like a possum chewing briars here, and we'll use this front room right here for us to have our classroom part. So we'll use the front side for classroom part. Behind it, there's a couple of office spaces and this and that and the other. Everything from there back will go away. We're going to gut it all. It's got 2 bathrooms in it. It's got a big kitchen area. I say big, it's the size of my office twice over, in there. Kitchen area with another bathroom in it. And Mr. Andy's going to leave us all the appliances that we need in there, for a kitchen. And so we'll have a kitchen area, and we're actually just going to use it for a study room, right? Because, our kids are constantly asking us Bible study questions. Actually, Ben and Am are studying with one of the Next Tech mamas right now while we're having this conversation. They're in the room studying with one of them right now. And so the kids are constantly asking me questions. Well, we just need a place. And plus, not all of the current kids drive. I'd say it's about 2/3 of them drive, but some of them don't. Well, some of them, it'd be nice to have a place for their mamas, to stay, and somebody from KW be there with them and visit with them and love on them. It's another way that we can, as a body, as a church, just fit in and love, right? And so what this will allow us to do is we'll be able to have the space to grow. We've had several companies. I got a machine in Georgia right now, Marietta, Georgia, that's waiting on to be picked up to come over here. Miltronics, a company from Chicago, they came down, headquarters in Chicago. They came down and met with us, and they were just so impressed with the place. And they was like, we got stuff we're going to send you, but you ain't got nowhere to put it. I said, well, we're working on it. Well, this is our way of working on it. So we're going to acquire this building. This will allow us to grow. Brother Tim Simmons has offered he's retiring next year. So it'll take until we probably won't be able to have classes here. Our school year follows a traditional government school year, right? So we'll run until about May or June. And then, it's real busy for us at KW through the summer months. And then, we usually pick back up after Labor Day weekend or Labor Day time frame to start back classes. And so that'll be about the time that Tim's retiring. That'll help Tim come on. We told Mr. Andy that we'd give him to March because, like Dale was talking about end-of-life stuff, well, we're all going to die and turn into a yard sale, but Mr. Andy's going to turn into a huge one, okay? I mean, this place is full of stuff, and there's probably 50,000 appliance pieces in there and bags. And I mean, he was really organized, but it still doesn't mean anything if you got a bazillion of something. And so he's going to need time just to get all that stuff out. So we told him we'd give him to March to get the stuff out of the place. And so he'll have to March to get it. And I go over there periodically for just different things, and he's making progress, but he is in his 70s. And I even offered, we would offer to help him move, but I mean, you can't beat the price we're giving him, so I ain't going to argue with him. Not going to create work for me. I'll just tell you that. Leave it at that. But so we'll have the place. We'll own the place outright. We'll have enough space that if we ever need to grow again, we'll be able to grow again. To where we were actually looking at 2 places, and Chip, he made a great observation, and what tipped it kind of over the edge for us was it was about the same size. But it was if we need 1,000 square foot, we'll probably need 5,000 square foot next time, and then we'll know that we can grow here better than we could at the other place. It was landlocked and not as good of a location. This will provide. I mean, you can sit there and there's 1,000, 2,000, just as many cars as you want to count go by there every single day, and so we'll be able to have the quote unquote brand recognition just because of the location that we're in. We'll be able to kind of create the environment that we want to create in a place like this, because now we'll have the space, we'll have all the, we won't have to use the church for the classroom. We won't have to use, just all the things we have to do. And here's, for example, I'll show you this. This is a video kind of what it looks like. You can see real quick why we need to have. This is our kids. I took this video the other day. And you can see how tight they are in there now, right? They're on top of each other. And our senior kids teach our junior kids. So you can see we're literally out of space, right? And what this will also allow us to be able to do is with Tim coming on, he'll be able to move more into the instructive capacity. I want to be intimately tied in with the spiritual side, right? Because if we are not achieving that goal, I don't want to have nothing to do with it. And because my only motive is just, I want to get as many people to heaven as we can. And this is a great way that the Kensington Woods Church of Christ can work together as a body to do this. And so the Lord has certainly blessed us with many ways. We've had, some people say that they're going to make some donations, and so we're well on our way with that. Now, we haven't, it's kind of the checks in the mail, right, type thing. They said they will. You trust them, right? But we're going to try to raise as much money as we can. If we have to, we'll borrow what we have to finish this. But ultimately, what this will do is it'll allow us a greater way to expand and just more people. And so then we'll be able to we'll do a 26-week workforce ready scenario. So like Keeson's daddy right there, he's not here today, but his daddy wants to do it. You know, one of the boys standing over there with Aiden, Sebastian, went to our beach retreat. His mama wants to do it, right? So we'll create a 26-week workforce ready scenario. I've started meeting with all the private schools in Hattiesburg. You know, they've kind of solicited, you know, hey, we'd like to talk with you. So the private schools, you know, the government schools have called me. I just haven't made the time to go out there and talk to them. So ultimately, you know, we've got an unlimited, as many people as we want to do, we can do. But that's not our goal. Our goal is to grow so that we can sow. But that's still got to be a strategic play. We still got to know how to do that and be able to do it in the right kind of way so that we can control and meter. Because like Josh, George, and I were talking today, he's like, you know, 30 kids in a class or 30 people in a class, no matter what it is, whether it's adults or kids, you lose the intimacy. You know, you just can't interact one-on-one with 30 people like you can with 6 or 8 or 10. And so we assume to start moving in after the first of the year. I need a forklift. If anybody's got a forklift they can give me, I would appreciate a forklift. And so we're going to start moving in after the first of the year. You know, the stuff like the machine in Marietta. I already told Mr. Andy that we've got to have a place. One of the kids' daddies owns storage buildings, and he would let us put it in his storage buildings if we need to for a temporary time. But I don't want to move it twice, right? I mean, I don't want to move it and then move it again and everything like that, because storage places, they're not climate controlled, you know. And then ones that are, you ain't gonna be able to get a forklift into them, right? You know, they're the ones that are the little inside jobs. And so, you know, this is why we needed to. The elder said we need to take up this special contribution so that we can understand, you know, how much more, you know, KW, you know, we'll have to borrow or whatever towards it. So any questions, anything that you know, Kinley might be able to answer some of the legal stuff or whatever. You got any questions about that? I don't know, but she answers them for me anyways. But is any questions anybody has about this? Is anything that's not clear about what we're doing, why we need to move, anything like that? Anything, you got any questions? Ms. Jolie, I love it.
The building's already been purchased?
So we've got a contract on the building. Kinley's supposed to get me the closing date. What'd you say, Monday? Yeah, Kinley's going to get me the closing date on Monday for the building.
And this morning you mentioned you wanted to raise $329,000?
Yes, ma'am.
And that includes $225,000 for the building?
Yes, ma'am. So if you want to see the breakdown of what that's for, I can give that to you. Yeah, I've got all that on our website. Well, I've got a page on the Next Stick Academy's website that I've sent out to churches, and I'll be glad to give it to any of you guys. You can see that you can't get there from the main menu per se, but you can get there from this link, and you know, you can give it to whoever. But it's got the information. You can click on this little download right here, and I just put on there some pictures and some videos and stuff like that we have on there. But all the information, including our curriculum, our 1, 3, 5, 10-year plan, you know, all that stuff. I got about 8 or 10 pages of data on there, including our nonprofit paperwork. Everything is on there, you know, because ultimately, you know, we're going to need, it's wired for single phase now. We're going to have to wire everything for 3-phase in there. You know, we're going to have to buy an air conditioner. We're going to have to buy, I mean, it's just renovation cost, right? Tearing out all the stuff, you know. And so the one thing that I have done a lot of is build a lot of things. And so, you know, I understand the cost of some of those things, and I also understand that it's always not what you think it is. But good question. So $329,000 is the building price and the renovation cost, including a forklift if somebody doesn't give me one. And so I'm expecting a forklift is going to cost me about $7,500. And so but does that answer your question?
Mostly. Do you plan to have a generator?
A generator for what? Power? Explain that to me.
If the power goes out when the tornado comes through, or hurricane,
You could set up a humidifier on a generator and do it at that point. But that's a great question, though, Sister Jolie, because, you know, like USM, for example, they've got some, you can tell government money because they invited us over there. They gave us a thousands of dollars worth of aluminum, but they've got probably $150,000 worth of equipment in the basement over there. And when I went down there to look at it, I was like, guys, you've got to turn this stuff on. And I offered to come over there periodically. I'm at the student center for various reasons. I'll come over here, turn it on, and just jog it around. Just oil the ways and everything. Just keep a layer of oil on everything. And they said, well, we're worried about the liability of me getting hurt. And you're just like, you're going to waste $150,000 worth of stuff for me to turn it on and do this. Just move it around, right? And so ultimately, it going down for a little bit of time, we could get on the front side of that. But that's a great idea. I probably ought to. And Chip and I talked about this too, about putting a generator in. And because Mr. Andy, he's the kind of guy that you would want to work for you, but wouldn't want to work with. He's just super anal and like, he's got like outlets in this place every 18 inches, right? And so the good thing is we could actually grab one of those circuits real easy and do that. But that's a great question. Good thinking. Those are the kind of questions that are good benefit.
I used to talk to online, they call it Patriots. They have a solar power generator. I think it's around $300 to $600.
Okay, good. Good.
So like a whole house.
Well, that's what we need, Brother Tom.
So the 329 just gets us in the building.
Right.
It gets us ready. There will be ongoing costs. You got power bills. You got all these things that will carry forward. So it's not like we're done. We're raising this. We got to have this just to get it to start classes.
Right. Yeah. So the 329 is to get us going. We've got several unique ways that we're looking at perpetual funding because, like this right here, this is something that I made. It's sitting right now at a manufacturer in Canada, and I've been talking to manufacturers in China. The manufacturer in Canada is right in the PCB board that goes in here. This is a remote control controller. So I figured out a way to control our machines remotely, and I've got standing orders for this product right now. I just have to get it made. I can write coding, but like I was telling Dale earlier, it's like square wheels on a bicycle. You get it going good enough and you can't feel the bumps, and once you slow down, it'll rattle the fillings out of your teeth. And so this guy in Canada, he's actually finishing writing the coding, making the chipset for it. We've got several strategies that we're looking at for long-term funding, just to be able to get it. And now we've even had some foundational guys step in and say, hey, once you get up and running, we're looking to help you out. But for them, it's an unknown right now. I don't know what it would cost, right, to get it up and going. I just know that it will cost. I can tell you what it costs me now. And if it goes in waves, the kids have tore up $1,500 worth of stuff in the last week, right? Well, they don't usually tear up $1,500 worth of stuff, but sometimes they tear up $1,500 worth of stuff, right? But you know that you go in with eyes wide open, so you know those things are going to happen. But there will be ongoing operating costs, as it were. Sister Pam.
Is there room for expansion on that property?
Yes, ma'am. And one of the strategies.
I know there's a field.
Yes, ma'am. Great question. Yeah, so a couple of the strategies, obviously we have the room that if we need to expand, we can, right? One of the strategies that we're looking at for expansion is actually like Aiden Stafford and Aiden Donovan, they play on the Forerunners sports league. And so I've approached the board there with them about building, because they don't have a gym. They kind of bounce around from the Baptist church to the Presbyterian church to here and yonder. And I've approached them about building a gym there that they would pay the lease on and essentially just pay for the building. I said 5-year lease, y'all can have it for 5 years, and then we'll know after 5 years whether we'll need to expand again or not. And if we do, you just say thank you, I appreciate your time, and y'all can find a new home. And so we've got the room, and we've got even ideas now of how to do that. Great question. Sister Key, did you put your hand up?
No cost to the student.
Zero. Yeah, there's no cost to the students, right? So, and that's one of the things that we're looking at for long-term funding strategies is because there's so much industry interest here. I've approached several of the manufacturers in town that have been, some of our primary door knockers trying to get our kids. I've approached them with the idea that once we get up and running, and say it cost us, let's just use $100,000 for a year for a number. It costs $100,000 a year, and we've got 50 students, I don't know, whatever. We'd like for you to sponsor 10 kids at $2,000, tuition at $2,000. And, all the one I've talked to, they said, yeah, we get that. And even one said, and it would still be luck of the draw. I was like, yeah, you can ultimately expect out of the Next Tech Academy what you're willing to put in it. So if you're just in the background and you want to put your little flyer on the desk, that we're Excel Molding, we're JPM Industries, we're Dues Foundry, Laurel Machine Foundry, whatever. If you just put that on the desk, the kids are eventually going to get grease on it. It's not going to pay attention to it. But if you're there and you're intimately tied in with them, if you really want to get to know them and this and that and the other, that's how you're going to have your greatest chance of success of soliciting. Because everybody, ultimately, the kids will get to go where they want to. They're at the point now that the guys are saying, if your kids are 17, we'll hire them now. We'll take you now. And they're even like, we'll talk to the parents if we need to talk to parents and just get them to be like, we'll pay for their school education. We'll pay for, their apprenticeship, whatever we got to do to get them. Brother Elwood.
How many students do you expect to have for a maximum amount of students?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because we want to, remember, our motives are spiritual, right? And just because the idea of it, we don't want to get no more between the 30 and 40 range, right? Because there's two reasons behind that. 30 to 40 students in the current facility where we are now, we can't grow, number one, it's just the equipment, right? If you got 100 students, you got to have that much more equipment, which exponentially increases the price of what it costs, right? And so what we would rather do is do 30 to 40 students, do 4 classes of 8 to 10 kids, right? 4 classes of 8 to 10 kids or students, because we will do an adult side of this, 8 to 10 students, and then that way we still get to maintain that kind of intimacy with them from a class size. And if we need to grow again, we're just going to have to pray about it and ask the Lord to send us another instructor that wants to reach people with the gospel. That will be a hindrance to growth as we go forward. There's enough money out there, foundation-wise and stuff like that. We could buy as much equipment as we wanted, build as big a build as we want. But really, that's not doing the Lord's work then. So for us, it'll be incumbent upon who we can find or who we can train, because we just got to expect that there's going to be kids that are going to come through this that are going to end up as instructors in the Next Tech Academy as we go forward. It's just the nature of how it'll work. Great question, Elwood. Any other questions? Miss Jolie, I love them. No sorries.
This is maybe for Kinley or maybe your attorney. Are you aware that Next Tech Academy is a registered trademark name from a company in Madison, Wisconsin?
Yeah,
Is
I've
that
talked.
an issue? No, it's not. Because it's not a nonprofit. Okay, so they're registered separately.
Did you hear that, Jolie?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're registered separately, and really the challenge with anything like that, and a great question, because I've thought about that, and is ultimately there are so many, like if you go to sign for an email, like you go Jolie Moore, right, or Jolie Russell Moore, or Jolie Moore dot Russell, or whatever, there's always so many of these things out there, and there's so many that exist that don't exist. Does that make sense?
People buy to sell it to you.
Yes, exactly. People buy them just to sell them outright. But great question, because I asked Kinley that when we were writing the paperwork. I was like, do we need to name it the Next Tech Industrial Academy, for example? And I said, or do we need to, and all our letterhead, call it the Next Tech Industrial Academy, and just internally, like, we are not KW, right? And internally, we're KW, but externally, we operate as the Kensington Woods Church of Christ. Does that make sense? And so, Kinley, what did you have to add to that?
We can also, if it ever became like a notoriety issue, you can register a trade name, and so you could technically change it if it ever goes down.
Great question. I love it, Jolie. You're a good advocate. Any other questions? I love it. Just sit down front.
My biggest concern is the liability issues. Will there be enough insurance to cover that 501(c) that it doesn't interfere with everything?
So that's why it's its own separate nonprofit, right? Just because there is obviously a liability issue. And, one of the things that we do maintain at the highest level is safety. And I can't stress that enough. And I tell their mamas and daddies, and I tell the students that, like, I'm the one that sets that standard, but ultimately stuff happens, right? You can't mitigate against the anomalies. And so we do have, like we're even refining the waiver. Kinley, I've actually got she handed me a draft of it today that we're going to take care of it. Yes, all the insurance. I mean, liability insurance is, unless you're a roofer or something like it, it's really surprisingly pretty cheap, for what you can get for what you would need, right? But yes, great questions. And that's another reason why we had to move it off of my property. Andy was jumping up and down because of the actual liability of it, because they could go after me, or if it happened, it could, essentially the church would have to have umbrella insurance. I mean, it's just, as far as separating resource and liability, that's why, one of the reasons why the Next Tech Academy lives as its own entity now, nonprofit. I'm just going to stay keeping this way. What's your next question? Okay. All right. Great questions. I love them, Jolie. Kinley.
One thing about that too is, just for clarity, KW does not own Next Tech. Next Tech is its own thing, and it's more of a brother-sister relationship. They're not liability related at all.
Does that make sense? So it exists as its own entity. Now our elders, all of them sit on the board, right? So from an advisory standpoint, that's overseen, because this is we cannot, while we have to legally exist separately, spiritually, just like when Paul said in 1 Corinthians 12, I don't remember what verse it is, and he said, "Is not the cup we take the body and bread of the Lord?" He wrote that in Ephesus, talking to the church in Corinth, right? So it's a communal thing, the brotherhood. This is a work. Next Tech is not the church, it's a work of the church. Kinley.
I know people were concerned about the expansion also. And I know you've seen it, but bird's eye view is technically 2 lots.
Yeah.
So it's a lot bigger than just the building in the parking lot.
Yeah, it's a lot bigger. It's substantially bigger, actually. And all that land beside of it, Mr. Adams, I haven't even approached it with it. They don't do anything with it. Adams Nursery's right beside it, and we own a big chunk behind it. We own a really big chunk behind it. And we kind of landlocked Mr. Adams' place, and if we need it, I'll just go talk to him. And I'm actually going to go talk to him just about, hey, we may need this in the future. Just kind of put this in your pocket, just so he's got it in his mind. Not that we're committing to anything, but just so he knows. They tried to set up one of these little gardens beside it, for neighborhood place. Please quit stealing the corn. Please quit stealing the tomatoes. Well, everybody just kept stealing the tomatoes, so they just abandoned that project. So obviously, that was on Mr. Adams' land, I think, or it may have been on ours. I don't know, but either way, it's unused. Nobody, it's not really utilized. So good question, good comment, Kinley.
In this, we're not going to take anything from the government, right?
No, we haven't asked the government for a dime. There are some strategic ways, like Dale was talking about, from one of the things we're working on doing is Beth, she's not here, and Jason Hendricks, a brother in the church in Florida, in Lakeland, Florida, they're working on getting us credentialized so we can offer a certificate of diploma, right? Well, one of the other ways, because I'm a systems of redundancy guy, like I don't want to just put my eggs in one basket. I've talked to Heritage, where Taylor went to school at, and they're hyper interested in creating. There's no brotherhood school that actually has they're liberal arts, right? There may be nursing or something like that, but there's no brotherhoods, there's no church schools that offer any kind of technology degree. So we're talking to Heritage about actually what their idea was like for high school kids, they could graduate high school with an associate's degree in technology. They would do all their 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic online, and then their lab portion would count towards the associate's degree in technology. And what that will then afford us is, so for example, I don't know, let's just say Dale Hubbard Industries makes podiums, mobile podiums. If you're registered as an accredited school, then Mississippi sets the cap on this per school, but not a government school, a private school. PCS, Lamar Christian, all of them stick their hand in this cookie jar. It's public information, and I looked it up. They'll set a cap at how much an individual, it's only half, so the school may be able to get $200,000, right? Like PCS, I think their cap is $200,000. And then it's incumbent upon them to solicit Dale Hubbard Industries as an individual. He can pay half his ad valorem, his state taxes, not Dale Hubbard's taxes, but his state business tax, he can pay half of it up to the amount of the cap that the government sets to the Next Tech Academy. So it's really a tax structuring thing at that point. It's not the government giving us any money. Because
They want something in return.
we already understand that one. And so the church, when it got into bed with the government at 315 AD, it made a mess, and we've been paying for it ever since then. And so, yeah, ultimately, we have no interest. And that's really, that's why some of the foundations have reached out to us, because we exist as the only private vo-tech school in America. And they've looked for people that they can find to do something like this, and they can't find them. And we're the only ones now. And so, great question. John Nix.
I mentioned this. I guess it's a two-part question. What are some of the results or fruits of this from a spiritual standpoint? Has there been students or family members that have been converted, saved, or baptized from the studies? And has there been anyone that has been employed, as a result of the trade? So
spiritual and secular side then. Great question. So the spiritual side, yes, there are people here at KW now because of it, okay? And I don't know if it's necessarily my place to tell how they fit into that scenario and how, but I'll just tell you that there are people that you go to church with week in and week out that have obeyed the gospel because of the Next Tech Academy. And there's another component of this from a spiritual standpoint, like Aiden, he's working at the tree lot now, but one of the kids whose daddy's a doctor, and I can say this, is this live stream, Randy?